everyone assumed Max Verstappen was already halfway out the door to McLaren or Mercedes. But on August 20, 2026, he and Red Bull Racing officially announced a contract extension that keeps him at the team through the end of the 2030 Formula One season. This is not a short-term bridge deal or a placeholder agreement designed to buy time while negotiations continue elsewhere. It is a definitive commitment, adding 4.5 years to his tenure, replacing his previous contract that had only run through 2028. And it arrived just days before his home race at Zandvoort, with the explicit intent of silencing every exit clause rumor that had dominated the summer break. The paddock expected a departure, or at least a hesitation, yet what they got instead was the longest single extension of his career, timed precisely to reshape the narrative before the Dutch Grand Prix weekend even began. But here is the tension that makes this announcement so much more complicated than a simple press release suggests. Just 7 days before this deal went public, Red Bull technical director Pierre Wache told Motorsport Week that the team had absolutely no confidence in the RB22 car, admitting they face a different problem every single time the chassis hits the track. So why would the reigning champion lock himself into a 5-year future with a team whose own engineering leadership publicly declared uncertainty about their current machinery? The answer does not lie in present-day performance data or championship points, because those metrics currently point toward volatility rather than dominance. Instead, the rationale for this massive 2030 commitment hides inside private conversations about regulatory overhauls and interpersonal trust that have never been part of an official FIA rulebook announcement. We know the contract exists, and we know the car is struggling, but the specific bridge connecting those two contradictory facts involves details about engine formulas and leadership dynamics that most coverage has completely glossed over. Max Verstappen stated plainly in the official Red Bull Racing release that he is really pleased with the contract extension, framing it as the ultimate goal everyone has been working towards. He did not qualify that statement with caveats about needing immediate performance upgrades or demanding specific technical guarantees for the current season. Laurent Mekies, who took over as team principal from Christian Horner in July 2025, described the agreement in a Formula One.com exclusive as phenomenal news for Oracle Red Bull Racing, emphasizing that retaining the best driver on the grid for another 4.5 years validates the rebuilding process he has led through a technically turbulent period. These are carefully chosen words from both sides, designed to project stability while the RB22 continues to exhibit structural integrity concerns that left both Verstappen and Ishaq Hadjar feeling the car coming apart during sessions earlier this year. So where does that leave us right now? We have a signed document securing the sport's biggest star through the next regulation cycle, yet we also have a technical director's blunt admission that the current car lacks fundamental reliability. The gap between those two realities is exactly where the true story of this 2030 deal lives, because Verstappen did not sign based on what the RB22 is doing today. He signed based on what he believes is being negotiated behind closed doors regarding the post-2026 era. And understanding those discussions requires looking past the headline numbers to examine the specific regulatory concessions and relationship repairs that made this extension possible despite the on-track chaos unfolding in real time. The timing of this announcement was engineered to land with maximum symbolic weight at Circuit Zandvoort, transforming what could have been a routine administrative update into a definitive homecoming statement. Red Bull and Verstappen coordinated the August 20 release specifically to precede the Dutch Grand Prix weekend, ensuring that when fans arrived at his home race, the speculation was already dead and replaced by certainty. This strategic scheduling matters because it reframes the entire narrative arc of the 2026 season from one of potential departure to one of entrenched legacy. 4.5 years is not an arbitrary number tacked onto a press release for legal convenience. It represents a calculated bet that spans multiple regulation cycles and extends well beyond the current technical struggles plaguing the RB22 chassis. Verstappen himself addressed the duration directly when he told ESPN that he never felt the desire or need to change teams to try and win somewhere else, asking rhetorically why he should leave if he feels well within the team. That question serves as the emotional anchor for the entire extension, shifting the conversation away from contractual obligations and toward personal belonging. He described the team as being like a second family in the official Red Bull Racing statement, language that carries specific weight, given how openly he had questioned his future just months earlier. This is not the vocabulary of a driver managing leverage or keeping options open. It is the vocabulary of someone who has resolved an internal conflict and chosen to stay. Laurent Mekies reinforced this framing in his Formula One exclusive interview, stating that the simple truth is Max has always said he wanted to stay with Red Bull from the very first conversations about the extension to the very last. That consistency claim is significant because it directly contradicts the external noise that had built up throughout the summer break when McLaren rumors and exit clause speculation reached fever pitch across multiple outlets. Mekies positioned himself as the steady hand who navigated those uncertain waters, noting that having Max continue with them and retaining the best driver on the grid is fantastic news for Oracle Red Bull Racing. His promotion to Team Principal in July 2025 came during what multiple sources describe as a rebuilding year technically, making this contract renewal the first major validation of his leadership approach. Numbers tell their own story here. The previous contract ran through 2028. The new deal adds 4.5 years. The announcement date was August 20. The venue was Zandvoort. Each data point reinforces the others, creating a lattice of specificity that leaves no room for ambiguity about commitment level or timeline. Yet even with all these confirmed facts stacked together, there remains a critical distinction between what has been announced and what has actually been delivered on track. The contract secures Verstappen's presence through 2030, but it does not secure competitive parity for the remainder of 2026. Those are two separate equations, and conflating them would misrepresent both the nature of this agreement and the reality of Red Bull's current position in the championship fight. So what have we established so far about the foundation of this deal? We know the extension is real, the timing was deliberate, the duration is substantial, and both driver and team principal have framed it as a mutual choice rooted in trust rather than obligation. But knowing the structure of the agreement only gets us halfway to understanding why it happened now, under these specific circumstances, with the RB22 still generating problems every time it touches asphalt. The other half of the explanation requires examining the private factors that outweighed public performance metrics, beginning with the interpersonal dynamic that Verstappen cited as the primary reason he changed his mind about potentially leaving the sport entirely. Before this agreement existed, Max Verstappen told Laurent Mekies he did not know if he wanted to stay in Formula One. That admission was cited by multiple outlets as evidence of how genuinely open the situation truly was. The contract extension announced on August 20 was never a foregone conclusion or a delayed formality. It was actually a rescue operation for a relationship that had drifted toward genuine dissolution. The driver who now commits through 2030 was uncertain months earlier about racing past this year. He later joked to ESPN that he was closer to retiring than changing teams. Sky Sports immediately seized upon that line as the definitive quote, closing the door on rival speculation. Treating that joke as mere deflection misses its deeper diagnostic value for understanding this deal. Humor often carries truths that are too heavy to state plainly in formal press releases. When Verstappen frames retirement as the more plausible alternative, he signals his bond with Red Bull had become binary. Either this specific partnership continues, or his career pauses entirely without a backup plan. This distinction matters because it recontextualizes every subsequent quote about feeling at home with the team. Those are not generic platitudes recycled from previous renewal cycles or standard media training. They are hard-won conclusions reached after a period of authentic personal doubt about the sport itself. Mekies stated in his exclusive interview that Max always said he wanted to stay from the first conversations. That framing unfortunately smooths over the rougher edges documented by other sources covering this story. The reported early season hesitation was not performative negotiation leverage designed to extract better terms. Multiple outlets treated it as legitimate uncertainty about whether the sport still held sufficient appeal. Silence followed doubt. Doubt preceded clarity. Clarity enabled commitment. This sequence proves the extension emerged from resolved internal conflict rather than external market pressure. Had Verstappen simply been playing teams against each other, his messaging would have focused on contractual demands. Instead, his message focused on existential questioning about his place in the sport. That is a fundamentally different starting point for any contract negotiation in modern Formula One. It explains why the eventual resolution required more than just financial incentives or performance promises. So where does that leave our understanding of what actually changed between early season uncertainty and late August certainty? We know the outcome shifted dramatically, but identifying the catalyst requires separating verified statements from speculative padding. What we can confirm is that Verstappen's cited reasons center on three specific pillars of institutional trust. His relationship with Mekies since the July 2025 leadership transition is the first confirmed factor. Ongoing regulatory discussions about post-2026 engine formulas represent the second critical pillar of his decision. Red Bull's demonstrated historical ability to develop out of slow starts serves as the third foundational reason. None of these factors relate directly to the RB22's current lap times or immediate championship position. All of them relate to long-term structural confidence in the organization's future direction. Go back to that opening line about everyone assuming Verstappen was halfway out the door, and you will see exactly why Pierre Wache's admission matters so much here. The assumption was wrong precisely because it judged commitment by current car performance rather than organizational trust. Wache told Motorsport Week on August 13 that the team has no confidence in the RB22 as of mid-August 2026. He stated they encounter a different problem every time the car goes on track. That assessment came roughly 7 days before the contract announcement landed. Verstappen signed anyway. His decision to recommit was heavily driven by his transparent relationship with Mekies and the team's development potential, despite that public technical pessimism. Verstappen described working with Mekies as really good, very open and transparent in comments reported by the race.com. This interpersonal foundation outweighed immediate chassis deficiencies in his calculus. Trust replaced telemetry. Process beat points. History informed hope. Red Bull's 2025 comeback from a 104-point championship deficit serves as concrete evidence supporting that historical faith. Verstappen cited that specific recovery as proof the organization can develop its way out of difficult periods. He is betting on institutional memory rather than present-day lap times. Mekies reinforced this dynamic when he told Formula One.com that they are united by a single desire to win with only one brief. That shared purpose functions as the glue holding the partnership together through technical turbulence. The RB22 remains volatile to weather and track conditions according to aggregated coverage, citing structural integrity concerns. Both Verstappen and Hadjar reportedly felt the car coming apart during sessions earlier this season, yet the extension proceeded regardless. This tells us the 2030 deal is fundamentally forward-looking rather than reactive to current competitive standing. It also reveals how completely Verstappen separates short-term frustration from long-term conviction. Wache's honesty about lacking confidence did not undermine negotiations because it confirmed the transparency Verstappen values in leadership. A team principal hiding problems would have damaged trust far more than admitting them openly ever could. So what does this tell us about the actual foundation of this 5-year commitment? We now understand it rests on relational capital and historical precedent, rather than immediate technical superiority. But understanding why Verstappen stayed still leaves unanswered questions about what specifically convinced him the future regulations would be worth racing under.